I'm Amy House, and I am a certified positive approach to care trainer with Teepa Snow's organization, PAC. I have Teepa's website up on the screen right now, which is www.teepasnow.com. I recommend you go there and check out some videos and information. Teepa is a wonderful representative for the entire community and my mentor, and I appreciate everything that she's doing in the world. But bottom line is Teepa can't be everywhere at once. So she has trained people like myself to be able to present on her materials and get the word out about how we can have a real positive approach to care for people living with dementia. I'm also a certified dementia practitioner, and I am the director of memory care at Brightondale, which is a Silvercrest property in New Brighton, Minnesota. Being the director of memory care here, I have a lot of experience and quite a few stories, and I'll be sharing stories throughout the presentation because I think it really helps people remember and connect things when they hear a story. But I won't be using any names or revealing the identity of anybody, but there are many, many people over the 25 years I've been in healthcare that influence and help me think about these stages of dementia and have a lot of aha moments. So I hope the same works for you. My contact information is on the screen right now. So if you can, take a moment and jot that down. My phone number is there and my email address. At the end of the presentation, at the end of the hour, I'm going to go ahead and send you a little message on Zoom that asks you to unmute if you want to. You can click that at that time, and then you can ask me questions, and I will stay until all the questions are answered. But if you don't feel comfortable asking something like that on the screen and during the webinar in front of everybody, you can always send me an email or give me a phone call, and I would be happy to go over some things with you. Okay, so we are going to go ahead and get started with understanding our stages of dementia here. If you are a nurse, social worker, administrator, activity professional, etc., and you would like a CE for this presentation, you can get 1 continuing education credit. And if you'd like, you can just send me an email. I will send you a little quiz and you can send that back to me and I'll send you a certificate. Lots of sending back and forth, but hopefully it's convenient for you to just be watching this at your desk. So what are the GEMS? Teepa's GEMS are basically a look at the stages of dementia. And what Teepa did was she realized there's a lot of different information out there about the stages of dementia, and it gets really confusing. And a lot of it isn't focusing on making sure the person has the right care and the right setting and that they can really shine. A lot of it is just telling you what they can't do. And she wanted to make a way to understand what's happening during these stages really easy to remember, but also to give some points and some ideas on how to support a person living with dementia the best when they're at those different stages. There are stages, there are different types of scales for dementia. Some of them are from a 1 to 7, some of them are from a 7 to 1. And some of them just say things like early stage, mid stage, late stage. And the problem with that is it's confusing. Is this a 1 to 7 scale? Is this a 7 to 1 scale? And the thing is that a lot of people get diagnosed when they're in the mid stage of dementia. And so everybody thinks, well, they just got diagnosed. They must be in the early stage. So to make that a little easier, Teepa put together these GEMS. And knowing that everybody in the right, with the right setting and the right care can really shine. But before we go through that, I really want to take a moment and just talk about dementia to make sure everybody has a good baseline on what that is. So dementia is an umbrella term, and it is talking about a range of symptoms. There are physical symptoms that appear, like changes in vision, changes in muscles and nerves, but they're also looking at a different, the chemical changes that happen to a person and the memory changes that happen. So with that, we have many different diseases. I think there's over 100 diseases that cause dementia. And each one of those is very different and unique, but the symptoms are pretty similar in how they affect someone. So 50 to 75% of people have Alzheimer's. and another 20 to 30% have a vascular type of dementia. Lewy body is another small percentage, and frontal temporal lobe dementia is the other. But again, there's over 100. We're just going to talk about the most common right now because they affect the most people. So if you have Alzheimer's, you have dementia. But if you have dementia, you don't necessarily have Alzheimer's. You might have one of over 100 diseases that is causing it. Another important reason to go to the doctor and see a neurologist and find out exactly what is causing the dementia, because everything should be treated slightly differently. So you're going to want to know what is causing this dementia. Something about dementia, it changes everything over time. Unfortunately, this is a progressive disease and it's a fatal disease. Although there are medications that can help manage some of the dementia symptoms, there is not a cure out there currently for dementia. And so it progresses over time and eventually causes the entire body to be affected and shut down. It's not something that people can control. In the beginning stages of dementia, as we'll talk about, sometimes it seems like people are doing things on purpose. You might think, oh, they just don't want to go somewhere anymore. They just want to stay home all the time. I think they're just pulling this because they don't want to go with me to that function. It's not something they can control. The person is doing the best they can with the brain that they have. It's not the same for every person. Each journey is very different, but there are a few things that are similar, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Dementia is not a mental illness. Mental illness is usually something that's caused only by chemical changes to the brain, where this is something that's chemically happening and physically happening to the brain. It's real and it's very, very hard at times. So that's why we're hoping the gems will help you with it. So here are a couple pictures that I wanted to show you just to, again, give you a visualization of how the brain looks and what happens to it. If you look, these are two men and they were about the same age and they had the same circumference around their head. And they were the same body type and build and height. So there wasn't a difference in the size of their brains prior to dementia. But the person who you see on the left has a healthy brain when they passed away. The person on the right has end-stage dementia. Those brain cells are actually shrinking and dying. And the cells are getting smaller and smaller and withering away. And that is why at the end of this disease, their brain will shrink to 1/3 of its original size. They will lose 2/3 of their brain throughout this disease. Teepa always says that if somebody's head shrunk the way their brain shrinks, we would definitely have a lot more empathy for how people are trying to do the best they can with the brain that they have. Now, with both of this happening, there's going to be abilities loss. And with Alzheimer's, the loss is fairly predictable. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Although different types of dementias still share a lot of these same stages, they just might have areas of strength that are still remaining. For example, I know some people who have vascular dementia who have a really good short-term memory, but they are really having a hard time with problem solving and understanding how to do things step by step. And there's a different part of their brain that's affected. But again, overall, this is predictable for dementia, and Alzheimer's is the one I'm going to focus on today, but it really applies to a lot of them. So everybody's experience is individual. What I talk about today doesn't mean it's absolutely 100% going to happen that way for the person that you may know living with dementia, but hopefully this will give you some understanding of what's happening. I just wanted to show real quick a close-up of that picture and in color so you can see the changes that happen to somebody's brain with Alzheimer's. So Teepa's gems. Teepa's gems, there are 6 of them. They start with the sapphire and then go diamond, emerald, amber, rubies, and pearls. And again, the reason that she picked the gems is because if you really learn about them and you give them the right setting and the right care, they can really shine. Now, somebody can change gems throughout the period over days, maybe even just throughout the day. You may have somebody who is a bright and shiny diamond in the morning when they are just refreshed after sleeping for the night. But by the evening, when their body and mind are tired, they might be an emerald. So again, it's a progressive disease. And you may have people who are one gem and then the next gem, and then, oh, they're back up to that other gem later on. But eventually, all of these gems are going to continue, and you're going to go through that entire cycle by the end of the disease. Another reason people might change from one gem to the next is if you're having maybe an infection going on, or the person has some kind of trauma, they fall. While they're healing, they may be in a different gem, and maybe they'll go back to where they were before, but it doesn't always work that way. So they can change. Don't think that everything here is carved in stone for that moment in time. We're just looking at them day by day and hour by hour to figure out, where is somebody on this dementia journey, and how can I support them best? So let's start with a sapphire. Sapphires are somebody with normal aging, no dementia symptoms. This is somebody who is having a good day. They're not stressed. They're not going through some kind of illness or something that might be causing them to have some brain fog. This is somebody who's having a good day, normal aging, no dementia. These are, a huge majority of our seniors who are still very sharp and able to do a lot for themselves. And as they grow and get older, they may feel blue over time. There's a lot of changes that happen when you're a senior. You may have lost a spouse, or you're losing a lot of your friends and family that are your age. There might be a big change in your independence because of some health concerns. There might be something going on where you're changing how you live and what type of setting you live in, from a house to an apartment. And it's normal to feel a little blue with those changes. And that's why Teepa picked the sapphire for normal aging. You might feel a little blue, but they're also clear and true blue to themselves. Sapphires know exactly what they want, and they know how they want it, and they've developed a lifetime of habits that are really hard to break unless the person chooses to change them. So for anybody out there who's trying to change your mother, your father, your husband or wife, when you're a sapphire, you're probably not going to change. You've come to your own, you've been here a lot of years, and you know what you want. It will take you, and only you, the sapphire, to change anything right now. Someone can't change you. Some are stars and some are not. Some really can shine, the sapphires, in the right setting. Also, with the right support, people can remain very independent for a long time. Now, sapphires can also still learn new things. And that's a little bit of a difference from somebody with dementia, because it's hard for someone with dementia to learn something new. But as you get older, you realize, maybe I should write a few things down. Maybe I should label things, and that'll help you remember them. It just takes a longer time to learn something new. My mother can learn how to operate a new smart TV, but it takes longer for her to do it than for myself to do it. It might mean that she's going to write a few things down about how to find Netflix and how to find Amazon Prime, but eventually she'll have it in her memory and be able to do it just with a click of the remote. So that is part of normal aging. When you're writing everything down and making sure you're not going to forget something, that's normal. And again, that's a sapphire. All right, so now we're going to talk about diamonds, and diamonds are the first stage of dementia. Diamonds are sometimes very clear and very sharp, and they can remember everything, and they're having a good morning, and you think, wow, I don't see any signs of dementia there. But again, things can change over the day. Their short-term memory is impaired. When a diamond asks you, what time is that appointment again? And you're telling them for the fourth time, make sure that they are looking at you and that they can hear you clearly. And if they can and they're still forgetting it 5 minutes later, you have a diamond, or somebody with something that's not normal going on and they should get checked out. But for dementia, that short-term memory on the left, on the, excuse me, that short-term memory on the left side of the brain here, it's like there's a little hole there. And when you're telling them the time of that appointment, boom, it goes right in that hole, it falls right out again. So 5 minutes later, what time is that appointment? They have a time where they're telling a lot of stories over and over and over again. I can remember my grandpa, who had Alzheimer's, telling me a story over and over again while we were playing cards as children. And he would look out the window and he'd see an old tractor. And all of a sudden, he'd start telling the story of the time he fell off of that and he broke his arm. Well, 5 minutes later, all of a sudden, his mind would wander and he'd look out the window again. And did I ever tell you about the time that I was on that tractor out there and I fell off and I broke my arm? We heard that story many, many times over our card game. And I never stopped my grandpa. And I never told him, oh no, you've already told us this. Instead, each time I just asked him some more details. Did you go to the hospital? What did your mom and dad do? Did you have to have a cast? I just decided I'm going to get more information out of this and an even better story every time instead of being bothered by it. And again, I'm the person with the healthy brain, so it's my choice to do that. It's best to not correct diamonds. They're pretty aware that they have something going on and that their memory is not what it should be. So when you correct a diamond and say, oh no, you should know who I am, or oh no, you should know what time that appointment is, or oh no, you already told me that story. When you do that, you're really pointing out a flaw to them and you're making them feel bad. So let's go with the flow and not correct diamonds. Let's let them have a good day. Diamonds also can really worry about money. Money, money, money. They think about bills. They think about how they're going to pay for this. They're thinking about where their purse is. They're thinking about how much money's in their wallet. With that short-term memory, they might be forgetting where they placed that wallet. So they're getting more concerned about that too. And so that's kind of sometimes a sign that somebody may be a diamond. They're worrying a lot about money. Diamonds can be very sharp and hard and rigid and inflexible. And that's why Teepa chose the diamond for this stage. It's really hard for them to adapt to any changes. And it takes a lot of repetitive routine for them to adapt. So it can be that they might seem a little sharp at times. They might say things that are a little negative. They might say something to you like, I don't need any help, I'm fine, get out of here. It could be that they know exactly how to push your buttons from sharing a lifetime with you. And those can come out very clearly when they feel like, you know, you're stepping on their territory, that they're an adult and they can take care of things. But because of that, they can really shine with that routine as well. If there's a diamond who has a routine down, they can be very safe and they can accomplish a lot and get through their daily routine and take care of themselves quite well. I have a story to share about that routine. So as the director of memory care here, I take residents out of the secured neighborhood and we go for walks in the park behind our building. And every time we leave the neighborhood and we go through the secured doors, we have a book where we sign them out. That way, if any of the staff are looking for them or if a family member shows up, they know that, oh, they went to the park with Amy. Now, I was walking through that doorway with a resident, and although that resident cannot tell me what happened yesterday, who she saw, what she did, any of that, she forgets everything from the day before. I'm walking past her and she turns around and says, I think you're supposed to sign out here. So it was that routine of always going through that door and signing out, going through that door and signing out and going to the park. Over time, she developed and remembered that that's important to do. That's one of the rules here. So I was very proud of her for reminding me of something. And I think she felt pretty good too, because there's not many things that someone living with dementia can remind others with a healthy brain about. So hopefully it kind of built up her self-esteem. Also, talking about diamonds, at that moment, she was very clear and very sharp. But the reason Teepa chose diamonds are because they have many facets. When you look at them, they can glow in different ways and you can see the diamond very differently from different light. And that's what happens with our people living with dementia who are diamonds. Family members can see them in different lights. Family members can think, boy, I think there's something going on with mom. She's been doing this and doing that, and she couldn't remember when this appointment was. And then there may be another family member who was just visiting with mom and chatting with her, and she seemed totally fine. I don't know what you're talking about. She seems fine to me. I talked to her this morning for an hour. We had a good little chat. And it could be that the family members are arguing over, is there something going on or is there really nothing to worry about? Most of the time, there is something to be concerned about. If you think there's something going on, if you're wondering if there's something going on, go get checked out at the doctor. Bring that loved one in or go with them and support them so that they can find out what's happening and hopefully work on some of the things that are reversible that might be making them feel like a diamond in the moment, but really are just that they're a sapphire and they're having some stress or an infection or they're having some labs and blood work that is off. There's a lot of things that can be cured. And then if it's not, and you find out, no, this is dementia, then you know what you're working with. You know how to handle it, and you can get the support from your medical team and family to have a really good, successful time as a diamond. So again, if you're not sure, there's probably something happening. Another little story about diamonds I want to tell real quick is I have some diamonds that live with me in the memory care. And I have a resident council meeting that I have every month with the residents. And one night, one day when we were at the meeting, one of the residents said, hey, I think we should have more spaghetti, when I was asking about what we should add to the menu. And a resident who was a very clear and sharp diamond at that moment said, we just had spaghetti last night. And all of a sudden, a whole bunch of residents were like, what? I didn't have spaghetti. Who got spaghetti? How come nobody offered me spaghetti? I would have liked spaghetti. I like it with meatballs. And they were all very concerned that, why didn't anybody offer me spaghetti? Why did this one person is the only person who got spaghetti? That was their short-term memory, okay? They ate that spaghetti and it went in and it fell right out of the hole and they forgot that they had had spaghetti the night before. So do you think that I pointed that out? Do you think that I said, oh, we just had spaghetti last night, don't you remember? No, of course not. Don't you remember? Oh, those are the forbidden words when you're supporting somebody living with dementia. I don't want to point out that flaw to them. So instead, I just said, oh my goodness, you know what? I'm going to make a note right here and make sure that next time we have spaghetti, we have enough of it sent out for everyone, if you all like it so much. And that was a way to show the support to everybody and not point out their flaws. All right, now we're going to talk about the next stage of dementia, which are the emeralds. Now, when you have somebody who's an emerald, you're starting out with a clear and sharp diamond, but now, oh, this is a green gem. There is an obvious change. Everybody can tell something is going on. And this is the part of the disease where most people are diagnosed because nobody's arguing anymore. Nobody's wondering if mom's okay. We know based on some of the things that have happened that things are not normal and we're going to go to the doctor and get checked out. Some of the things that happen are they're not as clear and sharp with their language skills, and their vocabulary is definitely affected. Losing a lot of their nouns, they tend to kind of talk around the subject and describe things without actually saying what they're trying to talk about. And it can be hard to figure out what are they trying to talk about. But if you listen closely, they'll have a lot of clues in there with the description. But those nouns are hard. It's hard for them to find the right word to point to an object or a person's name or a place. With an emerald, every single emerald, the actual gem, has a small little flaw inside of it. And that's why Teepa chose the emerald as this gem. And it's because deep inside, an emerald has flaws, but they don't know it. They're not as aware anymore. A diamond in the previous stage can be aware and can even try to hide the fact that they're having memory issues. But with emeralds, they're not aware of that anymore. They're not as self-aware. So they need help, but they don't think that they do. They may have, clothes from the day before on. Those clothes might be dirty, but they think, no, they're just fine. I just put them on this morning. They may need help in the bathroom with getting, cleaned up properly, but they think, no, I've been doing this my whole life. I don't need any help in there. They might do little shortcuts and try to figure out ways to appear that and feel like they're clean, but they're not because they don't know what tools to use. They might not be using the washcloth correctly. They might be grabbing a bunch of Kleenexes and washing up with Kleenexes because they just know it's something that I use to clean my body, but they don't know how to do it the correct way anymore. And we don't want to point that out. We want to support them and help them. What works really well with an emerald is when you do things with them, not to them. All right. As anybody can say, would you rather have somebody, if you had your zipper down, go, oh, hey, look, zip it up quietly, or would you rather have somebody come running over to you, grab you by the pants and say, oh my goodness, look here, we got to get this zipper up? You're probably going to slap that person, right? If one of your friends just all of a sudden came up and grabbed you by the belt and started zipping your pants up, you'd slap them away. We have to remember the same thing with emeralds. We're on the same team. We're a friend. We're not a boss. And by being a friend, they can do things on their own with some cueing and some visual cues like, oh, hey, look down here. Now, emeralds can have a lot of paranoia. They are hiding things in places because they're worried about somebody stealing them. And then when they can't remember where they are because they have that short-term memory loss, they're convinced somebody has stolen. Somebody has stolen my purse again. I can't believe this. It's like nothing is safe anymore. And really, they just don't remember that they hid that purse, under a pile of clothes in the closet. So we have to go around and help them find everything all the time. Now, here is one of the biggest things that happens with an emerald that tells people something is going on. Something is happening here. And I think we need to get this person to the doctor, and where it's very obvious that this could be dementia. They time travel. They are going back in time because that short-term memory is having more and more problems, but on the right side of the brain here is their long-term memory, and it's very well preserved. So they're pulling their information about their surroundings and what's happening in their life from long ago. They may be looking for their mother. They may be looking for their father who have passed away years ago. They may be in the situation that my grandpa was in. Before he was diagnosed, my grandma and him were arguing all the time. Little things like, oh, yeah, when we drive down this road here, isn't that where, Johnson's store is? And my grandma would say, no, they sold that years ago. It's now called, whatever, the mill store. And so they would argue, no, it's not, it's the Johnson store. No, it's not, it's the Miller store. That's because my grandpa's mind was going back in time, but she didn't realize it yet. So they were just arguing all the time. And then one day when my grandpa was mowing the lawn on his riding lawnmower, something he really enjoyed doing, all of a sudden he started going down the neighbor's field with the lawnmower. And my grandma ran out there and said, what are you doing? And he said, I've got to get this hay made. It's going to rain. We got to get the hay made. And he thought that he was back in time on one of his tractors, and he was making hay in the field that used to belong to him, but now many years later had been sold to the neighbor. So he really was going back in time. He really thought that this was still what he should be doing. And when he saw what was going on with the weather, he thought we should get this hay done. And that was very stressful to him. Now, is it a good idea to tell an emerald, no, this is not your land. This is not a tractor. We're not going to make hay today. It's not, because you're going to have to really have a good argument for that, because they are going to be completely convinced That is their reality at that moment. It's a better idea to join them in that reality and see if you can help them with it. You know, my grandma could have said, "Oh my goodness, yeah, look at that. You know what? I'll take over. Why don't you go in and get some lunch?" Take that off his plate. Make him feel like it's all going to be handled instead of saying, "No, this isn't your land. No, this is not a tractor. No, we can't be doing this. Come in the house." That's just going to start an argument, and an argument you're likely not to win. Another thing with time traveling at Emeralds, I had a resident who would stay up at night in home care, and she would stay up late at night and she'd be worried about her brother who was going to be arriving from Michigan. And her husband would try to convince her that her brother had passed away years ago, that he's no longer alive, he's not coming to visit, this isn't happening, we need to go to bed. And she would adamantly say, "I have to stay up. I don't want something to happen to them. I have to make sure that they arrive. I can't go to bed. They're out there on the road." And so what would happen, I talked to the husband and I said, "You know, why don't you try again helping her with that? Join her in that reality and see how you can help her so that she could go to bed." So the next night, when she got wound up and said, "Oh, I got to watch for my brother. He should be here anytime," he said, "You know what, dear? Let's turn on every light in the house so that they can see us when they get here, that we're still up. I'm going to stay up and take the first shift. I'm going to watch for them, but I want you to go take a nap and I'll take care of this. I'll make sure that they get here okay. And when they do, I'll wake you up." And then the wife would say, "That sounds like a great idea. Okay, I am tired." And she would go to bed. And then after she was sleeping, he'd finally shut all the lights off and join her. So that is something that you can try. Think about how you can help the person through this moment as they are seeing it, not as you are seeing it, because it's just going to be an argument. Also, what's going on with the emeralds, I just want to touch base on what happens with somebody's vision. So, back of the brain here is where your vision is, and they start having some changes to their vision with their peripheral vision. Take a moment, everybody, and just grab and put a pair of binoculars on. If you're wearing glasses, take them off for a moment so you can really surround your eye with your hand. This is a field of vision of somebody with this stage of dementia. This is what an emerald sees. And as you can tell, you can't really see anything off to the sides here. An emerald might not be able to locate their purse when it's right over here on their left. Why didn't they see it right there? So they're losing things, they're looking for things with a very small field of vision, and they're thinking that people are stealing them. It's a recipe for a lot of accusations, but we just have to take them in stride and help them find that purse at that moment. We're going to talk a little bit more in a bit about that vision and how it changes even more. You can put your glasses back on if you took them off.
Oh, 11, half an hour, yeah.
Okay.
I think.
Oh, here's somebody on there. I think that maybe we have somebody who's not muted. If you could please just check your screen and make sure that your microphone has a little line through it. I just heard someone speaking. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about, back to the person who might be having some technical difficulties. If you're not sure, you can always leave the meeting and then rejoin, and it's going to come up muted automatically because that's how I have it set. Now, the next stage of the disease that we're going to talk about, the gem is an amber. And an amber isn't actually a gem, but Teepa chose it because a piece of amber is actually some tree sap that has gotten caught and folded around something on a tree until it becomes a hard stone. Ambers are caught in a moment. That ability to focus and have attention has gone. And they are only thinking about what's happening in that moment to them. They're not planning ahead. They're not looking back. They're doing what is interesting to them at that moment. Because of that, they really can't do things that have steps to them. So you'll notice when an amber is given any kind of instruction, they do the one part and then they wait for the next thing because they can't think about all the sequences here. Maybe you could prompt somebody who's an amber and say, "Hey, can you try to button that?" And maybe they'll try for a while and they'll get that one button, but then they won't go on to the next button because they're just doing things one at a time now. Now, a big change that's happening to ambers are what's happening to the muscle and nerve strip of their brain. If you want to do a little muscle memory yourself, you can put your hand up there to remember that. What's going on with that part of their brain is the muscles are changing. The fine motor muscles that we have in our fingers, those little muscles that help us do all that detailed stuff with our hands, those muscles are starting to slow down and not connect with the brain like they should. So somebody may have a really hard time with that button, really hard. It's very difficult for them to get that one, but maybe after they get one, they're able to kind of loosen things up and do a few more. Or it may be just that they're having a bad day and they're not able to use those hands right now. Somebody with that fine motor change can also have times where their speech can really seem muffled. And it's because the fine motor muscles in our mouth that help us form our sentences and they help us with our pronunciation, those start to have trouble. So all of a sudden the person might sound a little bit muffled and one will go on with them. Well, it's just that they weren't able to get their lips to do every single syllable and vowel and such perfectly. So they're starting to sound a little muffled. And it, again, can take someone a little bit to warm up that mouth and be able to speak clearly. And you just got to kind of go with them and listen to that. But eventually they may be able to get some words out more clear. Another thing that's happening with that sensation part of the brain up here, where all your nerves are that a person's body, the muscle or the brain could be saying, we either want information or we have way too much of it. When you think about a small child who's exploring the world, a toddler, those are the same parts of the brain that are working for a toddler. When they're thinking about what does it touch, I want to touch that, I want to taste that, I want to feel that, oh, look at that, I want to do that. Their body is saying, you know what, go get more information. Let's learn about this world. Let's see what that is. Let's taste what that is. That's what happens to an amber. Sometimes the body is craving information. It doesn't know what to do next. And so it's looking to see what can we learn about our environment. And so sometimes ambers can accidentally, put rocks in their mouth or other sharp objects that, maybe they shouldn't have. You have to really be concerned about the safety for an amber because they no longer have any safety awareness. That drive and that need to find sensation can have somebody up and climbing on a chair and then climbing on the counter and climbing on there to get that beautiful cookie jar they saw up on top that looks really pretty and they want to see what it's about. They're not aware that maybe, they're 90 years old and they should maybe be very careful getting up on a chair and getting up on a counter and getting up on top of the fridge. The safety awareness is gone and they're going to do what they can for what they want in that moment. Same thing with seeing something outside. Oh, I see a beautiful bird outside. I'm going to go out there and try to see it. They don't think about the fact that it's, 5 degrees out, that they're not wearing any shoes, that they don't have a coat on. Ambers can really have wandering issues that can be very dangerous because they're not aware of this, the needs that they have to be safe. Also, that sensation can go the opposite way. It can be that there's too much sensory going on. The noises that they hear, the people talking, the breeze from a fan, all of that can really put their brain into kind of a fight or flight mode. And it makes them think, I can't handle all this. And the person could get very agitated and I need to, they need to go somewhere, they need to get out, they need to go. And they can't explain why, but it's the room, it's the sounds, it's the feelings. There's too much happening here. They need a quiet place to just kind of calm themselves. And because of that, if they can't get to that, sometimes an amber will just shut down and go to sleep. They'll just all of a sudden, just it'll be easiest for me and my brain if I just shut all this out for a moment and they'll fall right to sleep in a busy room. And that's because they really need that quiet time. It's too much for their brain to handle right now. So you have to think about that with an amber, somebody who's caught in this stage. If they're getting agitated, if they're seeming on edge, It could be something going on in the environment, that there might be too much information coming in through their senses and their touch and their feel and their smell and their what they can hear. So think about making a nice quiet environment for them and finding a way to connect with them when things are a little quieter and things are going well. Sometimes you have to just stop and close your eyes and really think about what's happening in the room. And you might realize, oh, there's actually a TV on in two rooms in the house right now. That explains why this person is getting a little worked up, because it's just a lot of stuff going on in the house at once. Same thing with any kind of party, maybe a Christmas gathering. Boy, mom loved Christmas. She loved everything about it. And then it's like when everybody showed up, she just went to sleep. Well, it might have been too much for her. As an Amber, things can be very overwhelming with your senses. Also, Ambers can do a lot of wandering. So you're going to want to make sure that somebody's always keeping an eye on Amber and that they're never left home alone. Emeralds too, the same thing. I would worry about leaving an emerald home alone at that stage. I hear a lot of stories of people who are left home alone when their spouse is going to get groceries. And when you're thinking about somebody in the stage of dementia they're in and whether or not they're safe at home alone, you have to think about it the way that you think about your children. And at what point are those children ready to be home alone? Well, do they know what to do during a fire? Would they know what to do if a stranger showed up at the door asking for money? Would they run out into the street after a kitten? Or would they look both ways and make sure that that kitten's okay safely? There's a lot of things you have to think about, that if an Amber wouldn't know how to handle those situations because they're caught in the moment and they're not thinking all that through, they probably should not be home alone then. We have to make sure that somebody's there to support them. Another thing with Ambers is that those nerves, those senses that are changing, they can cause them to be really sensitive to cares. The most sensitive parts of your body are the palms of your hands, the soles of your feet, your mouth, and your genitalia. Those areas have a lot of nerves. And so for an Amber, if those nerves in that brain are really amplified, think about the cares that happen in these areas. You can be giving someone a nice little hand wash and getting ready for dinner, and all of a sudden they'll go, wow, you're hurting me, you're hurting me. And it's like, well, that shouldn't hurt. It's because the brain is sending the wrong signals. It feels painful to them. So don't argue with it and keep going. We got to figure a way to back up, think about reapproaching this a different way. Same thing with personal cares, helping someone clean up after the bathroom or having a shower. Those areas are very sensitive. So they may get angry. They may get agitated. They might feel like it's too much. And it's important that we back off and try to think about maybe approaching it a different way, or stop for now. And I like, as Teepa always says, be happy with just getting a piece of the pie and not the whole pie. Ambers can be really, they can have a really hard time with all these sensory issues when you're doing cares. And so instead of pushing through and be like, let's just get this shower done with, let's stop when they say it's too much and back up, and maybe tomorrow try another step. When I say the piece of the pie, I'm saying that, maybe today I'm going to just do a nice foot soak because that's what they can handle. Maybe tomorrow I'm going to help get them under their arms. Maybe on, the next day I'm going to wash their hair. And it's just trying to get a piece of that pie so that eventually we have an overall pie of somebody being clean, but that we're not trying for that whole pie where sometimes it just ends up being a fight and then we've broken trust. And it's really hard to get somebody to let you wash them up in the shower if they don't trust you. So you have to think about that if you're a care partner. I'm just going to go ahead and talk a little bit about the next part of the disease, which are the rubies. Now, with the rubies, I have some things for you to try at home. First of all, a ruby, although their speech and their comprehension can be very little at that stage, they can all of a sudden just pop out of nowhere and have these really hidden depths. And we have to remember that the person that we still know and love is in there. We just have to give them the right care and the right setting for them to shine. I worked with a Ruby who said very little. If you asked her a question, she would usually just look at you for long, long periods of time and not have an answer, even if it was a yes or no question. She really had a hard time finding that language and those words. And she also had a hard time to get those muscles in her mouth to move. A reason why she picked the red of a ruby is because red means stop in a stoplight. And that's what happens. These fine motor muscles stop, the language can really halt. A lot of things are really hard to get started, and that makes it difficult for the person to respond and follow directions. Well, this lady that I was taking care of, who didn't say very much at all, and mostly liked to just sit and watch and see what people were doing, we were playing a game, and during the game, I was handing out little pieces of candy to everybody. And she had a little piece of candy in her hand that I had given her, and she was holding on to it. And when the game ended, I was going around and helping everybody with their candy and helping to clean things up. And she started trying to really get that candy open. Now, because she had lost her fine motor skills, she couldn't do that. She could not rip open that package. It was just too difficult for her mind to get those muscles connected to do those little fine motor things. So when I walked up to her and I said, "Oh, can I help you with that?" She looked at me with a big smile and said, "Well, it's about time." And we just laughed so hard. Now, that was just a brilliant moment of her humor and the kind of person that she was that just came out of nowhere. So, like I said, rubies have hidden depths. When you think that they're not able to say anything, all of a sudden something will come out of them and you'll realize they are there and they're paying attention and they've got a great sense of humor. Same thing with music. You can get a ruby to sing along to music where they may have a hard time talking, but that music is a special place in the brain too that they can still do. What happens with those muscles though? Now we're having trouble with the hands. Maybe I can no longer pick up a fork and manage to scoop something and get it in my mouth. That's a lot of fine motor muscle right there. So somebody might need to help me with eating, and they might need to help get the food on the fork for me or get me started. And once I get started, then those muscle memory comes back and I can help with myself. But also, there are other parts that really affect a ruby. And the biggest thing that happens to rubies is that they can start having falls. Now, falls are very scary, and I wish we could just wrap everybody in bubble wrap and a fall would never happen and nobody would ever get hurt. But like you learn with this disease, that muscle strip up here is causing there to be problems with their entire body, not just their mind. And your toes on the tips of your feet, the toes there are relying on that fine motor, and your toes are what give you balance. So later on today, I'd like you to just maybe walk around your living room on your heels and don't use your toes at all, and just see how hard it is to stay balanced, because when you shift your weight, your toes are what keep you balanced. Now, another thing that happens with these changes in the body that can cause falls are the vision. Before, when we were learning about emeralds, we talked about the vision being binoculars. Now, I'm just gonna get real close here. I'm gonna go ahead and be up on the screen so you can see me a little bit better there. Okay, so when you have those binoculars, your peripheral vision is slowly going away, and basically your eyes are all of a sudden trying to look in two different directions at once. And if you all just take a moment and take off your glasses and do that, you'll see how, yeah, it's really hard to try to look through both those eyes and keep everything focused. So what happens is your brain decides to functionally just shut down one of these eyes. It's much easier for your brain to focus through that one eye instead. So the person ends up with monocular vision. And this is the field of vision for somebody at this stage of the disease. And this is near the end stage. I want you to take a moment and back up from a piece of furniture or the computer in front of you. Do something so that you're a little further away. And I'd like you to close one eye, give me your best pop eye, and then put on your monocle. bring your hand up and I want you to look at your finger, okay? Now, I want you to try to go out and reach something that is out of reach, that you're gonna have to lean forward a little bit to get to. But I want you to do it in super duper slow motion. So you're gonna slowly start reaching out for your computer screen or the table in front of you, very, very slowly with that one eye closed and your eye open. And you think, oh my goodness, it must be right there, but you'll find out, no, you still have a few inches to go. And that's because with that one eye and that monocular vision, you don't have any depth perception. So when you think that you're just about to touch something, it's further away than you think. When you see that chair and you're about to take a seat on it and you think you're close enough, it's not there and you're not close enough and you miss the chair and you fall. When you're walking around with your field of vision this small, you don't see the things that are on the floor that you might trip over. Or you're focused looking down so much, you're trying to see what's happening and make sure you don't fall, that you don't notice that there's something right in front of you that you're going to walk into. So tonight or later today, take a moment, put on your monocle and close your one eye, walk around your living room on your heels, and tell me how things go, because I think you'll have a good understanding of why rubies start to fall and why it's so hard for them to get going and stop going and find things and stay safe. It's a lot for their body just to be keeping it upright and walking. To add any more to that is really overwhelming. So if you are helping out a ruby, go ahead and keep things simple. Keep things short and sweet. I want to make sure that when you're giving a ruby an instruction or what you want them to do, we're not saying large sentences with lots of information and different steps. It's one thing at a time and it's very simple. You know, you're helping a ruby brush their teeth. You know, you can say, pick up the brush and point at it. We're going to brush our teeth and give them lots of visual cues. After a while, it may be that the ruby does see and grabs that brush. Now, do they know what to do with it next? Probably not. So one step at a time. Okay. And now let's brush the top. Again, with that fine motor not working sometimes, they may not be able to do it and we'll have to help them. But let's give them a chance. Let's give them a chance to be as independent as they can and support them only where they're needed. The wake and sleep pattern too of a ruby can really be gone. That again, the body is really a lot to run with that brain. And so the brain gets overwhelmed and it sleeps a lot and they're very tired. I say, imagine the day that you were most tired in your whole life and magnify that times 10, because a ruby is very tired. Their brain is doing a lot to keep this body going and they don't have much to work with. So that person can sleep a lot during the day. Maybe they're up at night. Maybe they sleep for a couple hours at a time only, or maybe they just don't sleep at all because that part of the brain has been affected and they don't need sleep. So that can be really hard for a caregiver to make sure that a ruby is taken care of and that they're safe 24 hours a day when they're not sleeping anymore. Now we're going to go on to the last stage of the disease, and that is the pearl. Teepa chose a pearl because when you look at an oyster shell, the shell can seem really ugly from the outside. The person that is now living with dementia, they're hidden in that shell. They're quiet, they're unable to move, they're probably in bed most of the time, or maybe in one of those wheelchairs that recline so that they can be out and about, but safely and in a lying position. Sometimes they're all pulled together with their muscles and in the fetal position. So it's really hard to look at that person and see the person that you knew. But again, with the right care and the right setting, that shell can open up and a beautiful pearl is inside and the person that you saw is still there. Let's talk a little bit about what's happening to that body, that muscle strip that I talked about. The muscle strip can be turned in the on position and left on. So somebody's hands might start to clench up into fists. Those arms that were out here start getting pulled into the body. The person who stood up tall all of a sudden is hunching over as those muscles in their abdomen contract and pull them down. Now, those muscles are on that on position. And if we just try to force them open, it's going to hurt. It's going to be like muscles tearing. So we don't want to do that. When we're caring for a pearl, we have to do everything slow as possible, as calmly as possible, and give their body time to respond. Eventually, that pearl can open up. But again, it takes a lot of time. It's really hard for a pearl to connect verbally, but they still have some of that social chit chat there. They can surprise you. And I used to take care of a lady who didn't say anything. But if I came in the morning and I got right in that field of vision, right in front of her where she could see me, and said, "Good morning." If I waited about 20 seconds, which is a very long time, I'm not even going to drag this on 20 seconds because it'll seem too long for the presentation. But if I waited that 20 seconds, all of a sudden she'd be like, "Good morning." And it came out of nowhere. So I just needed to give her a real long time to process that and a chance to respond, which doesn't happen if I walk up there and just go, "Oh, hey, good morning. Good to see you. I was hoping that we could do some fun stuff today. I hope you're feeling good today, blah, blah, blah." There's no time for her to respond to that. So I have to keep my things short and sweet. Again, using music is another way to connect, and being able to all of a sudden have somebody open up that shell and sing along to a song, that can happen. Now, again, this person is having a really hard time. They're in bed most of the time, and what we're looking at is the end stage of the disease. This person, the pearl, is usually somebody who's on hospice and receiving support, and they're sleeping most of the time. But again, with the right care and the right setting, we can still connect with them. So those are the stages of the dementia disease, with looking at them as precious gems. And I want to take a moment now. I'm going to stop sharing my screen here, and I'm going to invite anybody, if they would like, to ask a question. I'm going to say, let's see. Pardon me. Of course, I'm going to have a moment trying to find this, but I'm going to find a way to unmute you and ask if you want to be unmuted. And if you do, you can ask me a question and I would be happy to respond. So there should be a little icon that's popping up on your screen right now that says, would you like to be unmuted? And if you do, you can click on that and you can ask me some questions and I'll be happy to talk to you about it. Or you could put something in the chat box if you would like.
I have a question. Well, first of all, thank you for this. This has been very helpful and informative. I was just wondering what you recommend or suggest when they are time traveling and looking for a parent that has been gone for quite some time, as far as like what to say, either when they're looking for them or if they've at some point, like she just straight out asks if they've died. So I'm just kind of wondering your recommendations on that.
Yeah, that is one of the most difficult things that can happen, as far as, you know, connecting with emotions and trying to be supportive and being put in that position of, well, do I lie? What do I do? So the question was about when somebody's time traveling and they're looking for a spouse or a parent, somebody who is deceased, and they're trying to find that person. How do you handle that situation? Well, there are a few different ways that you can handle it. First of all, I want to say, if somebody does straight out ask you, did they pass away? Did they die? That means that somewhere they're remembering that, and we should not lie. I don't want to say, "Oh no, they're still alive and they're at the grocery store right now." Because guess what? If all of a sudden they never come home from the grocery store, I have broken trust. And again, it's really hard to take care of a person if they don't trust you. So I don't want to lie. I will, in that situation where the person is recognizing it themselves, I would say, yeah, they did. It was a long time ago though. So you probably, don't remember all of it, but yeah, it was so sad. I really miss them. I really do. And just start talking about the person and how they made you feel. A lot of times when somebody is asking for a certain person in the early stages of the disease, that's what they're looking for. They're looking for the way that person made them feel, whether it's secure, whether it's loved, whether they were the person that made them feel like they were always on track and they knew what to do with their day. They're looking for that feeling. So another way to handle it, if they are completely unaware that the person passed away, is to help them try to find that feeling. So when one of my residents will say to me, I got to get going, I got to go and see my mom and dad. I'll say, oh, your mom and dad. Well, tell me about them. And she'll start telling me about where they lived and what they did. And I'll say, and how many brothers and sisters do you have? And we'll just have this whole conversation about family. And in the end, that's usually what they needed. They just needed that feeling. They wanted to talk and reminisce and remember and feel good and have somebody supporting them through that. Now, that is a very different feeling that I'm creating by talking about the person and remembering them than if I said, no, your parents are dead. That is not how to handle it. What might happen then is that the person can get very upset and say, what? When did they die? And it's like they're feeling the loss all over again. I've seen people get angry. Why didn't anybody tell me? When was the funeral? Why didn't I go to the funeral? And it can be very distressing. So again, we want to instead talk about the person, ask questions about the person, give them that moment to really sit and enjoy and love that memory. One of my residents, a family member, recently created a beautiful memory book for them. And I have to say kudos because it's so nice. And it's full size page pictures of them. And what they did was they put it in chronological order. So the picture book starts out with pictures of them when they were a child, their parents, the house that maybe they grew up in, whatever they had from that time. And eventually it goes into them, their graduation picture, time after school, when they met their husband, when they had their kids, pictures as their kids aged, and it brings them all the way to the present. So now, if that resident is saying to me, where's my mom and dad? Where can I need to go. I have to find my mom and dad. I can say, well, I don't know what your mom and dad look like. Can we go look at a picture of them and then I can see if I can help? And I'll go and I'll start looking through that book and the stories that will come out, and they'll go through it page by page. And what can happen is that person can all of a sudden get on that linear timeline, and it can spark a lot of memory and get them back to the present where they know what's happening. And there isn't this aha moment where all of a sudden they say, oh gosh, I remember now, they're dead. But it just goes, oh yeah, those are my mom and dad. And oh, here's this person that I loved in my life too. And here's this person that I loved in my life. And it can go all the way through that timeline with them to just remind them of all that they're looking for. I hope that helps with the question and that it was enough detail. I know everybody's experience is different and you have to kind of figure out what works. One of the blessings of dementia and being a caregiver of someone with dementia is that if you mess up, it's okay. They might not remember. So you can come back and try it a different way next time until you figure out what really works well.
Thank you.
Amy, this is Lisa. What are your thoughts about, it seems like as they go through this, some of them get really mean and kind of nasty. And then there's others that progress and they're the sweetest, kindest, loving person. It seems like it kind of changes their personality. What are your thoughts about that? Is it kind of resort back to just their temperament, or just kind of trying to
Good question.
Understand that better?
Talking about kind of what happens to somebody's personality and how that can change with this disease. If you remember when we were talking about dementia, it's not only the physical change that's happening in the brain, but it's also the chemical change and the chemicals that those brain cells and neurons keep going through the body that give you your ability to stay calm, your ability to have a good time, your ability to see the glass as half full. Those are things that can change with the chemistry. A big part of the brain, the frontal lobe here, is where the person has their filter, which can be really tough because that filter is what tells you to say, oh, don't say that. That would be mean. That would be hard to hear. That would be, insensitive. That filter's gone. So the person's just going to say however they feel, which can be really hurtful at times. Another part there is their ability to see it from the other person's point of view. That part of your brain helps you see what is going on with another person and how they might respond to this situation. When you don't have that, all you see is how it's affecting you. You can't consider that this is not a good time for being upset. You can't consider that I think I'm making my daughter cry right now. You're just thinking about what's happening with you because that's all your brain can do. And so that can cause a lot of changes in personality as well. And the other thing is all those chemicals and the different parts of the brain can be affected. There are parts of the brain that can be affected and can make somebody cry. And maybe they're not sad about something, but they're crying all the time. And it just overwhelms them. It just takes them over and they're crying and they seem very upset when there isn't an obvious reason. So personality changes happen with this disease. And like you said, sometimes people will be maybe a very harsh personality and they will change to being very sweet and very accommodating and sure, go with the flow. But a lot of times it happens the opposite. And we may have somebody who was very sweet and charming and wonderful and that we always just felt like we could go to and would be there for us. And now all they're doing is they're thinking about it from their point of the view. And if something upsets them, they're right at that boiling point and it's just like they boil over with the smallest thing. So again, that's chemical changes. Excuse me. That's chemical changes. And you have to look at what is causing that reaction in them. If there's a cause, let's do something about it. You know, when we talked about kind of that different, what's going on with the environment and the sounds and the noises that happen and how it can be really hard to a person to take all that in, they get agitated. Well, let's do something about that environment and let's make it quieter so that it's better for them. But if we can't do something physical like that or change something, then it's something going on in their brain. And it may be that a medication would help them with that. I always say personally, if I am upset and if I am irritable all the time, I would like somebody to try a medication that would help me because I don't want to feel like that all day long. I would rather feel, calmer and not be right at that boiling edge over the edge point all day long. So it is that there's something going on chemically and physically. It's not that the person has changed, it's that their brain has changed. And we have to try to not take it personally because we're the ones with a healthy brain who can hopefully try to see it from that side. I hope that's helpful.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yes, I have a special friend in the nursing home. And once she was put in, they knew she couldn't take care of herself from the assisted living. So now she's in the nursing home. And this is just a general nursing home with no memory care. She's always packing her bag and trying to leave. Or if we come visit, she wants to go with. So how do we handle that? Do we take her suitcase away? Do we take extra clothes away so she can't pack? Or how do we leave without her getting upset and wanting to come with us? Because she knows she's in the nursing home now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of the ways to help out a situation where somebody doesn't want you to leave, and they're feeling like they want to go home with you, or they're always packing. Part of that can be about boredom. Okay, I'm not sure where I am. I'm not sure where I'm supposed to be, so I definitely want to get out of here. And so that person starts packing, and they start doing those sort of things. When you're leaving them, and they're all of a sudden saying, oh, I got to go with you. Don't leave me here. I don't want to be here. we again have to think that you're their friend, you're their lifeline, and you're the person who's familiar. Of course they want to go with you. That's a natural response. It's not something that we should say, no, you shouldn't feel that way. But what we have to do are validate those feelings and work through them together. A couple things you can try. First of all, you should always be on their side. And that was what I was talking about with that validation. And you should say, I know this is hard. It's so hard to be away from you, but we just got to try this for a little bit longer. I'm looking forward to the day that we can be together more too. And just kind of think about that person of authority, that the doctor wants you to stay here a little bit longer. But again, be on their side. If it was up to me, yes, absolutely, you'd come with me. But we really have to follow what the doctor's recommending. And so let's just stay here a little bit longer, and then we'll talk about it. You're not making promises to scoop somebody up and take them home and they can live with you forever. But you're saying, I value your opinion and I want you to just give it a try. And if you don't like it, we'll talk about it, because I really want to know how you feel. I want you to be happy. So by validating how they're feeling and letting them know that they've been heard, a person can feel much calmer. There are other people who are at a different part of the disease who that may not work with, because they're no longer having those complicated thoughts. They're thinking more of, you're the person who helps me get the things that I want. I don't want you to go anywhere. And so distraction can be very helpful with that person. Think about when you're there, instead of just sitting around and looking at each other talking, let's do an activity together. Let's work on this puzzle together. Let's look through an old photo album together. Let's do something to keep your mind off of the fact that you're in a nursing home and that we're visiting somewhere that's not home. And let's instead connect in different ways. And then when it's time to go, you could ask one of the staff, can they come over and work on that puzzle for a little bit with your friend? Can they spend a little time there so that when you go, you can just quietly go? That is really a good way to handle it. And you can tell them, in a little bit, I'm going to have to go, but I'm going to stay here as long as I can. You don't want to just sneak out and disappear, but you don't also want to drag things out. I had a lovely woman whose husband would come visit her, and he just did not understand that he shouldn't drag out these goodbyes, because it just got her more and more worked up. And so he would grab her hand and be like, I know I'm going to miss you so much. I love you. And he would just be, pouring his heart out to her, the sweet man, but it would just get her more and more agitated and more distressed that this big goodbye was happening, because it seemed like I'm never going to see you again. It was so dramatic. So instead, we have to be more matter of fact and be like, I'll see you later. I'll stop by again tomorrow, or I'll stop by, very soon. You can maybe write a little note for them and hang it up that says you're going to come on this time, on this day to visit next, so that they know when to expect you again and they don't feel like they're being left behind. So I hope those are some ideas on how to handle that.
Thank you. Very, very helpful. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of along the same lines as that, what do you do with the parent that calls you like 25 times a day?
Yes. So the parent that's calling you 25 times a day, first of all, we have to think sometimes about whether or not a phone is appropriate for somebody to have. There can be a part of the disease where that person, again, isn't able to see things from the other side. They're not able to have that reasoning and judgment. And they may do things like call 911 because, they want to go somewhere. Those instincts from their life are still there, that they know, well, I need something. When you need something, what do? You call 911. Maybe their emergency is that they need a snack, but to them, this is urgent. I want this right now. And 911 means help. Help, it always means help. I'll dial 911. Or my daughter always means help. I'm gonna call her. So I would say, first of all, if the person is gonna have a phone and that they don't know how to use it appropriately, where they are calling at all hours of the day or they're repeatedly calling. Now you can work with that, having some boundaries of your own and saying, I'm gonna answer twice a day or something, and try to keep that phone silenced. You can consider whether or not that person should have a phone during the night. A lot of times somebody in this stage will be living somewhere with help, like a memory care. And maybe the staff can take the phone out of the room at night so that you're not getting woken up at 3 a.m. That phone can be such a visual reminder for somebody of, oh, well, there's the phone, I can call somebody. And instead of, oh, well, I want a snack, let me walk out here and see if there's a staff person who can help me with that. They see that phone and that's the first visual cue of, oh, that's how I get help. And they don't think of the other visual cue that's right around the corner, which is a physical person that could help them. So it might be that you want to take the phone away at certain times, or that you just want to personally put some boundaries on that. But then we have to look at, well, what's going on during that period of time? Is it a certain time of day that you're getting a lot of phone calls? Because then maybe we should try to set up something for them to do during that time. Maybe we should have a certain activity that they enjoy during that time. Maybe they're calling starting at 2 p.m. because they're starting to get hungry and they are just thinking about that snack, but they're thinking, well, if I call my daughter, she'll know what to do. And so maybe we should set up a snack at 2 o'clock every day and try to get ahead of that hunger. There's a lot of things that you have to do is think about what is triggering it. So it's good to talk to the people that are there and say, you know, what are you noticing at this time of day before mom starts calling me 20 times in a row? Is there something that they could do and set her up with that would be enjoyable for her and keep her mind occupied? Are there things that they could do? Maybe a toileting schedule is needed at that time. Maybe a snack is needed at that time to help that person get through that. And of course, for somebody in the early stages, like I said, putting a note down or setting a time can really help them feel connected and know the next time that they're going to talk to you, so that they don't feel like this is, you know, they just don't know where you are, how to get a hold of you. You can say every day at noon, I'm going to call you and we're going to talk. And you can put that on their calendar or put a large note up that can help them feel like that time is coming. They can wait for it. Again, lots of ideas. I like helping people with dementia because I like coming up with a lot of different ideas and seeing what one works, because when you know one person with dementia, you know one person with dementia, and everybody's going to be different. So I apologize that I rattle off so many ideas, but I hope one of them is helping.
Mhm.
I have 2 questions. I'll ask them one at a time.
Yeah.
So as far as the money situation, and so my mom's in a facility where it was recommended, you know, for her to not have any credit cards or cash or whatever. So when she discovers that, it's very concerning to her. And obviously, you know, I know it's okay, nothing's been stolen. But I'm wondering, I usually say like, oh, I'm working on getting them replaced, or it's okay where you're at, you know, everything's taken care of, you don't need any money. I'm just wondering if you have any recommendations for that.
Yeah. So what I tell family members about money in a memory care is give the person what you're not afraid of them losing. And that is different for everybody. I have some residents who have 5 $1 bills in their purse at all times because it makes them feel like if something came up, I can handle it. I got $5. It makes them feel better that if I go to the salon, I could tip them myself, you know, stuff like that. But I also have had people that carry $200 in their wallet because that's the amount of money that they feel the best with, and that the family has said, if those $200 get dropped in the toilet, well, so be it. So you just have to do whatever you feel comfortable with them losing. Another thing to try, the credit cards and worrying about credit cards. I had a resident who had her credit cards in her purse, and her and I would go over to the dollar store, and you know, her daughter would kind of tell me what she can spend, and so we'd go over to Cub Foods or the dollar store and do a little shopping here or there with her card, and then I'd always send the daughter a picture of the receipt so she knew what she spent. And eventually, the person wasn't able to get out to the store as much, but they were still able to answer the phone. And one of the home health aides was in their room when they got a phone call, and they answered the phone and were like, "Hi, yep. Oh, okay. Okay, yeah, just a minute." And she walked over to her purse, and the home health aide said, "Hey, what are you doing?" She's like, "Oh, this is a club I belong to. They just need my credit card." And so luckily the home health aide was there and intervened and said, "Well, let me talk to the person." And the person hung up, of course. So that helped us recognize, wow, she still has that thought process of going to her purse and getting her credit card. But oh boy, we probably need to change that so that she can't accidentally give that information out to somebody. We had talked about, should we just take it away and see how she handles it? Or is there another solution? And one of the ideas we came up with is you can always call a credit card company and say that the card was lost or stolen, or not stolen, probably lost. The card was lost, and they will send you a replacement card. And then that one that they have in their purse no longer they can't be taken advantage of by using that number because it's not going to work anymore. So that was a way for that resident to keep that credit card and feel like she has the ability to go shopping if she ever wants to, without worrying about somebody draining her bank account with a scam. I hope that was helpful.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so my other question was, my mom with dementia hasn't been driving for quite some time, but is every day looking for her van and wanting her van back, and where's the van, and I need and so on. So suggestions as far as that.
Yeah, I've had a few families get creative with that. One gentleman had this big, beautiful truck that he loved and couldn't drive it anymore and shouldn't be driving it anymore. But oh, did he love his truck. So his family had a parking space in our underground garage that they kept the truck in. And they took out the battery so that even if something happened where he was down there and found his keys and such, that it's not going to go anywhere. And so they would continue to remind him that it needs a new battery, but that, yeah, we can go down there and look at it. And we'd walk down there together and look at the truck, and he'd show me the whole thing and talk about it and the places he's been. And it was a really great it was like a tool for reminiscing, but it wasn't that he was going to be able to take it somewhere. So they had done that and to buy us time. Now, if you're trying to still think about a van that is no longer around, you don't have access to it, you can't see it, you can't say that it needs fixing, then it might be again that person is trying to find that feeling and that freedom that the van gave them, that they were able to go places and do things. So think about, well, are we taking mom out regularly? Can we put something on the calendar so that she sees that every Sunday we're going to go for a drive? What is it where does she want to go with that van so much? Let's see if we can try to recreate those things for her so that she still feels like she's supported and she's not stuck in one place, but that she can still go out and enjoy those things with the support of other people. Another thing with driving, whether you're trying to take the keys away for the first time, or if you're really just trying to remind somebody of why we can't take it out anymore, but I'm happy to support you, is to use a person of authority. I would love to give you the van keys, Mom. Boy, that would be so easy if you could just bring yourself around to these appointments. But unfortunately, the police have said that I cannot. And they have said that you cannot currently drive. Now, when you're feeling better, we can see about maybe talking to them again. But until then, until you're feeling better, we have to follow their rules, because I don't want to get in trouble with the law. So hopefully that person of authority can really help them see that this isn't you making the rules, it's the police. You got to have like a bad guy so that you can again be their ally and their friend and support them.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions? I do see that somebody had written in the chat box, they're wondering what percent of dementia is inherited. Now, that is a very large question, and I would not be able to give you an exact percentage, but it depends on what disease is causing the dementia. So there are inherited diseases like Huntington's disease, okay? It eventually causes some dementia symptoms, so that's going to be something that is 100% inheritable. If you get that you will then have some dementia. But there are also things to consider like vascular disease. Vascular disease is that you've had a stroke and that parts of your brain were affected by that, or you have narrowing of the blood vessels and the blood isn't always getting to the parts of your brain. That can be inherited. That can, high blood pressure can be inherited, high cholesterol can be inherited. It can also be lifestyle, but that can be something that can be passed on from generation to generation. Another thing that is sometimes inherited by a certain gene would be the early onset Alzheimer's, which is Alzheimer's that starts before the age of 65. People are tested for that gene. So if a parent of yours has early onset Alzheimer's, you can get tested and have your genes to see if you have inherited that gene that could cause it. The issue is that they don't have all the answers to why these diseases happen. And because if they did, hopefully they'd have a cure or a preventative measure to make sure that people don't get dementia. So even when you look at Alzheimer's, I work with families where, yes, dad, the uncles, the aunts, everybody in that family seems to have gotten Alzheimer's. And is that a situation where it was inherited, or was that an environmental factor that they all grew up together and they all had the same diet, or they all were exposed to the same things on their farm? I mean, we just don't have the answers as to why these diseases happen. So they can't say, is it that it's inherited or if it's something external that's affecting them? So the long answer is, I'm sorry, Victoria, I don't have the exact answer for you. But if you're concerned about that, you can speak with a neurologist and ask them if you're supporting a loved one with dementia. You can ask them at the neurology appointment, is this likely inherited? Is there something I should be tested for? Okay. Any other questions, anyone? It looks like somebody might be trying to say something. Oh, maybe you changed your mind. Well, I'm going to remind you that you can find my email, and you can always send me an email with a question, which is ahouse@brightondale.com. Or you're welcome to call me at 651-746-5611 with a question. If everything goes well with this webinar, I will be releasing a recording of it so that you can go back and look at it for parts of the presentation you might want to look at a little bit longer. I also recommend that you go to Teepa Snow's website, where you can see all of her wonderful videos and presentations and tips. There's products that can help support somebody with dementia. There's a lot at that website, which is teepasnow.com, and it's TEEPA, snow, like everything that is hopefully not coming back this spring.com, teepasnow.com. So thank you all for joining me today, and I will be hopefully coming up with some more webinars soon. I'm hoping to do some lengthier webinars that are specifically about each stage and tips and tricks and ideas on how to support somebody with dementia at that stage. So watch for that. And if you want to be on my email list or anything, you can always send me an email and I can let you know when those are happening.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amy.
Yeah.
Great job.
Thank you.
Have a good rest of your day, everyone. Thanks for joining me.